の注射をお尻にしたらすぐに治るわ。
Well, this is the post-COVID world. Cooper for this one featured a younger Hazuki agonizing over something. If you're talking about the view, then I'm totally on board with you. The episode proper opened with Hana suffering from something that was a little grosser than what Hazuki went through, though not by much in my opinion. But yeah, she had a case of constipation, which is a common issue for toddlers, especially those who didn't eat enough of their roughage. And again, I just want to point out how all of this was being caused by a crazy Karen witch who was trying to end a toddler through stuff like, well, this. Like seriously, you make this lady look cuddly by comparison. With that, the Ojamajo tried some basic solutions, like giving her fruits like bananas instead and letting her play, but it didn't stimulate any bowel movements. At the same time, they also had to think about feeding some other kids, as both of their classes were holding luncheons for the first graders, which of course included Pop's class. What kind of soup are we talking? Is it like miso for the sake of the pun with miso and all that? Or is it just something from the can?
There's more soup! What do you mean there's more soup? There's just more soup! Go into the next aisle!
However, that was the least of their problems, as they still need to consider Hana's constipation. Thus, they decide to go with seemingly the most obvious solution in Spinach, hoping its colon magic could help. They had their fairy partners Google all of the spinach recipes, and this is why y'all have to use filters. However, they eventually stumbled upon a spinach chiffon cake, which, yeah, just kind of reminds me of another baby and her pooping problems. Poop! And yeah, from what I can tell, this is a legit recipe, and honestly, as someone who does enjoy spinach, it sounds pretty good to me. Granted, I don't imagine it having a unique spinach taste to it, as the veg itself doesn't have that much taste, but still, slightly healthier cake sounds like a good deal to me at least. However, Hana did agree, and found moldy looking cake to be gross, which fair enough. Also, y'all do realize that there's a much easier solution, right? I mean, as that earlier scene showed, Hana can eat fruits like prunes. So they could either pit and serve her some, or give her some juice. The latter would hardly be any different than this cake, as they also had to juice the spinach. But yeah, in the end, Pop ended up eating the cake in her niece's place. This did, however, transition pretty nicely back to the first grader subplot, because I guess they decided to be clever with this episode, and have a parallel plot with one of her classmates, which wasn't Reika's cousin, which would have been kind of fun to see the rich girl characters do 2 episodes in a row, but no, instead, it was this background girl named Sayaka. What, is her soul gem acting up? And sure enough, Yuki wasn't buying her BS, and managed to use the ultimate weapon against bratty kids and some horse girls. As it turned out, Sayaka also had something that she didn't like to eat, though frankly, hers was a little more ridiculous with the yogurt fruit salad, and no, it wasn't the fruits, which some kids wouldn't eat, but rather the yogurt. And in case you're wondering if it could have been lactose intolerance, that's a possibility, but it would take some next level intolerance. Yeah, well, most Asians can't consume a lot of dairy products because our ancestors were unable to partake in them until cows were actually brought into the countries. Yogurt has bacteria that makes it easy to consume, especially for younger kids. So yeah, this girl just didn't plain like to eat it, even though again, it's one of the easiest foods on the planet to eat. I mean, you can even turn it into a drink. All that said, Sayaka was still at least a little better than Hana, as she did the worst thing possible and threw the spork on the ground.
That was dramatic.
Seriously, I have no idea why they decided to use the serious dramatic music here, as it just feels a little much. Also, rather than just wiping it, y'all should probably at least wash it with soap for the toddler. Granted, it wouldn't really have helped, as Hana still refused to eat the stuff, even using one of her magical spheres that they had restored to give them legs, which is more gross than actually funny. Yeah, I'll say right now, this is a pretty mid episode just because it's not executing its tones very well. Like, serious moments aren't nearly as grippy as they should be, and funny moments lack the show's usual fun, over-the-top nature. Sure, bug kicks are weird, but not really funny, haha. Anyway, while doing some prep work for the luncheon, and giving some decent food prawn, the Ojamajo were informed about Sayaka's issues by Pop. This got Hazuki, who is now suddenly the main character of this episode, to recollect that memory from the cold opener. As it turned out, she also had a food that she was picky towards, which turned out to be the most valid in my opinion, cucumbers. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's an awful vegetable, it just kind of tastes like you're eating water. For one thing, I do think that celery tastes way worse because it has an awful taste and texture, but still, yeah, I also tend to ignore it in my salads too. However, there was of course a solution to this that worked on Hazuki, and thus the Ojamajo decided to apply it here. With that, they dressed up the classroom like a restaurant to apply the concept that we do eat with our eyes in the sense that it is easier to eat when we do have some good ambience to go with it. Moreover, they turned eating the yogurt fruit salad into a game by having them eat fruits that were randomly drawn from cards.
さくらんぼだ。私あった。あ
That's a good stem. Seriously, kid, you don't like eating yogurt and yet wood is fine? But yeah, this is supposedly how Baya got Hazuki to eat her cucumbers by turning them into sushi, or more specifically, kappa rolls, which are named after the Japanese water imp that supposedly love to eat cucumbers, because again, they just taste like you're eating water. Also, I would argue is a little more thanks to rice and seaweed being one of the most delicious food combos on the planet, but whatever, this also gave them a solution to their Hana problem. With that, they got in contact with the Witch Queen to set up a similar meeting in their world like their little luncheon. This led to probably the longest chain of stock animation we've ever seen in the show, with the Ojamajo's transformations, followed by warping to the witch world, and then the magical stage. Yeah, I think they realized how light this episode was on actual content, so they just threw all of that in at once. Anyway, the episode just kind of ended with the Ojamajo holding a tea party with Hana's friends from the nursery, and her finally eating some spinach cake, or more specifically, being force-fed it by the octo squid, but same diff, right? Yeah, this is a pretty boring episode. Like, for something that was rather light on story, it felt like it dragged on a lot longer than it actually was. I think it mostly had to do with how it just never felt like it went into second gear for either its comedy or even a little drama. When it comes to this series in comparison to some of the other magical girl shows we review on the channel, I'm not expecting any sort of insane fast-paced action, just some relatively easygoing and fun slice of life stuff. This episode certainly indulged in the former, but nowhere near enough with the latter in my opinion. Yeah, this episode just really felt like it was going through the motions of introducing a picky eater problem for Hana, discovering a similar issue in their everyday life, and then applying a similar solution to her. Now, to be fair, I do kind of like the solution they came up with, as I do think using the concept of eating with our eyes is a clever one that does also have some logical basis behind it. However, how they actually got to that solution was just executed so underwhelmingly. The Ojamajo met an obvious parallel in Sayaka, who got very little actual development or screen time, and they got a solution through a convenient flashback from Hazuki, who didn't really feature in the episode at all. It just felt so by the numbers, making the eventual payoff for both conflicts really underwhelming. Not helping matters was how the comedy here wasn't so much half-baked as it was just barely there. As a result, overall, this is just a very forgettable outing. Spinach, as Popeye has shown, is an amazing vegetable, but you wouldn't really know it through this little storefest of an episode. Thank you for watching, and if you want some advice for improving your colon health, I won't say much more, just go watch our videos. We've got something new coming out almost every day, especially now that we took on another show this season that I'm actually really looking forward to covering in Tojima Wants to Be a Kamen Rider. So look forward to that and a lot more, and until then though, fair for now my friends, and Popeye, if you're looking for the can opener, it's in the top shelf. You've got problems, dude.